Hi everyone, welcome back. As you can see, this is the scene that I'm going to be drawing today. I'm going to be using the grid method today. I've put a grid over this in white pencil, and basically if you're new to drawing and you're struggling with line drawing and laying out a drawing, this method will really help you out a lot. I'll just briefly explain what it is. It's almost fairly self-explanatory. But basically what you do, you draw 1 inch lines going horizontally and vertically, so you're left with 1 inch squares. You don't have to do 1 inch squares, you can do 2 inch squares or 1 centimetre squares, or something that's even quicker. You can just use the thickness of your ruler and just go along and keep, drawing the thickness of your ruler. And do exactly the same on the paper that you're going to draw on, and number them with how many squares you've got, down the side and across the top. It'll correspond with what's on your drawing, and then basically you can just line that up. Well, you don't even have to line it up, but I find it easy to sort of just line the two up so the lines are matching. If I'm going to start on this first inch on the top, so on square number 9, about 1/4 of an inch in, we've got this sort of shape, and it sort of leaves square 9 and goes on to square 8, just sort of below halfway, about there, and then it leaves square 8, so it comes up there, it just goes off before it gets to the end, comes down to square 7 where we've got this little tree sticking up, and before you know it you've got more or less a perfect line drawing if you carry on in that manner. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. The reason I'm going to be using the grid method today is because this foreground, I looked at it, I nearly didn't do this drawing actually because I thought the foreground was just sort of too much. It was hard to even work out what it was, it just looked very messy. And I thought, how do I sort all that sort of entanglement of tones and textures and everything else? So I thought, well, if I use the grid method I can just literally focus on one square at a time. That's why the grid method is so good. You can, instead of having all that overwhelming detail to focus on, you can just literally zoom in on a 1 inch square and just literally draw exactly what you see in that 1 inch square, then move on to the next square and so on, and eventually you'll have a pretty good layout or drawing of the photo that you're copying. So that's basically why I'm using the grid method today. This isn't actually going to be a full-length drawing demonstration of how to draw this picture. This is just going to really be about tips and techniques, because the picture itself took me 15 hours to actually draw. So that's a lot of footage there to get on a video. Even on a time-lapse or a speed drawing, it's still, it's still too long. I would have had to edit it quite a lot. So I'll be showing you basically in real time with a voiceover, but all the drawing will be done in real time, but I'll be showing you just small segments of the drawing. For example, once you've seen me drawing one of these squares with the rocks, you've seen me draw them all. It's the same technique, the same method with what I do, just in one area that I do all over. The same with the trees, the same with the distant mountains there, the same with this area just here. I'll just draw sort of segments of it in real time, and I'm sure you'll be able to work the rest out yourself because it's just repeated. So that should hopefully make for a good video for you. Right, so the materials I'm going to be using today are Derwent sketching paper, A4 size, a 4B pencil and a 2B pencil and an HB pencil. It's a mechanical pencil with a 5mm lead in there, but although it's an HB, it's actually very dark. It's the pentyl high polymer lead refills in there, and an HB lead is really the equivalent of a 2B lead. So if you've got a mechanical pencil that's a 2B lead, that'll be more appropriate than just one with an HB lead, if you are drawing along, that is. I'll be using Kohinoor pencil eraser, the Tombow Mono very fine eraser, a couple of blenders, a 2H pencil which I'll use to draw the grid and do quite a lot of shading. Somebody actually asked me what was the pencil holder that I was using in one of my previous videos. It's actually it's the Staedtler 900-25. I should have actually reviewed this in my last video when I talked about the mechanical pencils, because it's actually part of the set of the Staedtler mechanical pencils. And what I like about this, what's really good about this, it's got an eraser on the end that you can actually screw that down to have as much showing as you want, or none at all. It's got a pocket clip on there. I mean, those two features alone are impossible to find on pencil extenders or pencil holders. And it's also got, I don't know if you can actually make that out, it's got the LED indicator just there. That says 2H on there at the minute because it's a 2H pencil. It's all metal. You can turn the pencil round as well, screw it in there for when you're transporting it. So yeah, it's a great item actually. It's not very easy to find though. I'll try and put a link to Amazon if I can find it on Amazon for you. In fact, I'll put a lot of links to the kit that I use in the description below, because I do get asked quite a bit, what's that pencil using, where do I get it, and I'll put as many links as I can for you. So I'll be using that today. I'll also be using a kneadable eraser, it's actually blue tack, does the same job, and a dust brush. And that's it. Right, so let's get started. Okay, so there's the photo with the grid. I've already marked out the grid on the drawing paper. I'm just going to start by working in the top right hand corner and work my way along that top inch. Just to start with, I'm not drawing the whole line, drawing out and then going in and shading it. I'm working in sections. And I'm using a 2H pencil for this. As you can see, I've had to do a fair bit of editing in this video, but you get the general idea. It's just basically following the same lines that are in the reference photo and just transferring them over onto the drawing paper. I'm putting in the tree line now. It's more than an actual line. I'm sort of doing little circular motions to get quite a heavy sort of tree line at the top there. So I'm going to be blending in the distant mountains, and I don't really want to blend over, or blend away should I say, the tree line there. In hindsight, there was no need for me to really put it in now. I should have waited until I've actually finished the distant mountains and blended it all in. But anyway, I'm using the 2H pencil and I'm varying the pressure as I go along for the light and dark areas along the distant mountains there. And as I say, I'm working in sections, and as soon as I've done a small bit, I just blend it over and make it nice and soft, and then I work on another section and do exactly the same thing, all with the 2H pencil, just varying the pressure. Now I'm using a 2B pencil just to strengthen up that tree line just a little bit more. You know, adding some tones in at this stage can sort of help me get the look of the distant mountains and see how it sort of corresponds with the middle ground trees, see if it looks okay. But you can work in any way you want. You can literally do a whole line drawing, or you can work in one square at a time and finish that square and move on to the next square, or you can work, you know, in small sections like I'm doing. Keep going backwards and forwards, you know, between the foreground, middle ground, background, and just keep adjusting things and, you know, bringing everything on together. And also it's important to take care of the grid lines as well as you're working. I use a 2H pencil No, actually I used an HB pencil to draw them in very lightly. So anything darker than an HB pencil, I can just leave the grid lines there, because they won't show through, you know, as I'm working over them with a 2B pencil or 4B pencil or whatever. But in that sky area there, where I'm just literally using the graphite that comes off the blender and smoothing it over with a brush, the lines would have obviously shown through, so they have to be taken care of before you do anything like that. I'm still using the 2B pencil for this area. Little circular motions just to suggest trees way off into the distance, and then just softening them back, you know, to give that distant sort of look. Although the tone is pretty much the same as the middle ground trees, I will be making the middle ground trees a lot darker further on in the drawing. But for this area just here, for these small trees that are off in the distance, I'm just literally little circles with the 2B pencil, and then gently blending them over with a blending stump, and that will give me more or less the correct tone for the grass and the fields there in the distance. And then just going back in again with the 2B pencil and just touching up over some of the little trees and hedges, if I did actually sort of blend them out a little bit too much. Before I actually continue with that area, I've just drew in the stone wall there and the little path that comes down, and one of the trees there, and that stone wall will give me something just to work down to. Then I can sort of stop, look at the picture, and make sure everything's looking okay. Like just there, look, you're seeing the that area just suddenly completed there. Now for the stone wall, I'm using an HB pencil, and I'm using sort of dots and dashes, almost Morse code if you like, sort of overlapping Morse code, just to give some sort of texture on that stone wall in the distance. And then I go in with the 2B pencil and just darken it up just here and there, but particularly around the bottom, still using those sort of little dots and dashes all the way along until it's completed. That will probably look too harsh at that distance, so just a few light goes over with the blender should just take the edge off that detail, but not lose all the hard work that you've done getting that nice stonework sort of texture, but just soften it back just enough just to give it the appearance that it's sort of way off into the distance. And again, I'm just using the blender there just to fill in the grass and the fields. Obviously you're not going to see every blade of grass, or any blades of grass in fact, at that distance. It's just going to be varying tones, and the blender is ideal for that. Just using little circular motions just to put that little tree in there, and the same on this one. I'm not going to dwell too long on the trees in this drawing, or the explanation of how I draw the trees, should I say, in this drawing, because I've got several videos up showing how to draw trees, and I'd just be repeating myself if I went about it too long on this drawing. But all I'm doing, just very basically, is just little circular motions and varying the pressure for the lights and darks, a little blend over, then I go back in again with the 2B pencil and the 4B pencil just to re-establish some of the darks, and I even go in with the pencil eraser just to sort of get a few highlights here and there. So if this is your first time watching one of my videos, and it was the trees you were particularly interested in drawing, I have got other videos up showing how to draw foliage and trees. So if you go and check on my homepage, the channel homepage, you'll see some playlists there for that sort of thing. Right, for this section just here, I'm just starting to do a little bit more line drawing now, just bring the picture on a little bit, just put the angle of the bridge in or the curve of the bridge, and that'll give me something to work down to with the trees. You can see it's the same process that I'm using all the way through for this middle distance with all the trees. There's little tiny circular motions just to give some texture, and going in with a darker pencil to get some nice dark tones in there. I'm using the 4B pencil now just to put this this tree in the top left hand corner. It's almost silhouetted. There's not much variation in tone there at all really, just a little bit, but I can soon sort of take care of that with the pressure on the pencil again, you know, just keep varying the pressure, just ease off a little bit for the lighter areas and just press a bit harder for the darker areas, and just follow the shape. Okay, so that's the trees more or less completed. Like I say, I do sort of go back to foregrounds, backgrounds, middle grounds, you know, jump from one to the other as I progress through the drawing, so it might not be completely finished, but that's near enough for now. Now this part of the drawing is quite a good example of why a grid reference is good, because if you look closely, the line of the road, it goes above and just below the grid line, the horizontal grid line there. Now that's very hard to see with the naked eye. You'd probably almost guess that it was completely horizontal, and if you drew it horizontal, you'd put the bridge out and the rest of the drawing would slowly follow. It'd all be slightly out. But when you've got those grid lines there to help you with those very mild angles, which are really hard to see with the naked eye, you can get a lot more accurate with the line drawing. So it really is a good method, you know, to help you out with all those awkward angles and difficult perspective and things like that. So I do highly recommend the grid method for people that are just starting out, you know, and you may be okay at shading and getting the tones right and everything, but maybe, like a lot of us, we kind of struggle sometimes with the actual layout of the drawing and the line drawing. Well, the grid method is definitely the answer for that. Right, so onto the stonework now on the bridge. I'm using the 2H pencil for that, and I'm just lightly, I'm not copying, well I wouldn't say I'm copying exactly the pattern of stones that are on the reference photo, but I'm just getting a basic general idea of the size of them, the shape of them, and just lightly putting the shapes in with the 2H pencil. I mean, you know, you can copy them exactly if you want to. I don't see the point, really. I mean, a lot of people like to copy exactly, but sometimes you can just, you know, ease off a bit and relax a little bit more when you're drawing and just kind of do your own thing a little bit. Because this drawing is not, you know, copied 100% to the original photo. I've kind of done my own thing, particularly with the foreground rocks and the stonework on the bridge. Now I'm just using the blender, just a very light, gentle blend over, just to smear some graphite over the white areas, but I don't want to lose the pencil work that I've already done. So I'm going at that really gently. And this is how I build up the various tones on the bridge. I just keep repeating that process until I'm actually happy with the result. Now I'm going in with the HB mechanical pencil, and as I mentioned earlier, this is more like a 2B pencil. So if you're drawing along, use a 2B pencil for this. And what I'm doing, I'm sort of drawing the joints in between the bricks or the rocks or stones even, should I say, on the bridge there. Some of them are quite dark, you know, some of the stones actually stick out quite far, and there's big gaps in between some of them, and some of them are quite tight, so I'm kind of varying the line width between them a little bit. And then with the 2B pencil, I'm just almost glazing, if you like, with a pencil, just kind of lightly shading over all the work I've just done. And you can kind of see there the effect that it gives. It's starting to look more like the stonework on the bridge. And I just repeat those processes for the other side of the bridge as well, but I just drew the first half in just to give me an idea of what it looked like. So it's exactly the same process on this side. And also using a pencil eraser there, just to put a few little tiny spots just on some of the rocks, not all of them. Just select a few where they look like they might be sticking out a little bit more, and just put a little dot on top of them. It'll look like a little highlight, like the sun's just catching it, or a little bit of light's catching it from somewhere. You know, these little white dots that you put on things can really add a little bit of sparkle to the picture. I'm sorry about this shot. I put the reference photo too far over the bridge, but I do lift it up in a minute so you can see what I've done. But I'm starting to work on the foreground rocks now, and this is the bit that I was sort of worried about really, because I honestly didn't know where to start. It really just looks a mess, doesn't it, in the reference photo? It just looks you can't even see in some areas a differentiation between some of the rocks. It just looks like a mass of tone and texture. So this is where the grid reference really helped me out. I'm just working sort of 1 inch squares at a time with a 2H pencil, and you can see I'm going at it very slowly, and I'm just focusing in on that 1 inch square on the reference photo. Then my eyes flick down to the drawing, and I'm just trying to copy the tones and the shapes, just very, generally with the 2H pencil, and then just soften back a little bit with the blender. Just to move the graphite around a little bit, and then go in to try and establish some more darker tones with a 2B pencil. Still focusing in on that 1 inch square until it's more or less finished, and then I'll kind of move on to the other square. So as you're seeing this bit in real time now, that's basically how I completed all of the foreground. Just kept going in with a combination of the pencil, the blender and the eraser until I got something that resembled the texture that was in that square, and then when I was happy with it, just literally moved on to the next one. Exactly the same on the other side. So I'm doing exactly the same on this side. I have to say as well, it took me hours to do this foreground. As I mentioned at the start, the picture took me 15 hours to do, and I think the majority of it was this foreground. I mean, I think I spent at least 10 hours on this foreground. It seemed like it took me forever. It really was a labour of love to do that, but I think it was all worth it in the end. I was in two minds whether to not copy it exactly at all, and just maybe put some graphite powder down there and make a few rocks up, just kind of slightly impressionistic, but I thought, well, no, I'll try and copy the picture as accurately as I possibly can. Maybe that's a lesson I've learnt the hard way. Maybe I won't do this again. Maybe I'll just do my own thing next time, because it's like I say, it really did drag on and on. But it gives you some idea of how long you have to spend on these things. Okay, so I'm working on the bridge now, in a dark area there. Although on the reference photo it all looks, well, just flat black, there's actually some rocks just showing just at the bottom there that the light's just catching just a little bit. They're still heavily in shade, but you can just make them out. So I'm just kind of suggesting them now, just very roughly, with the 2B pencil, just drawing in the shapes and then just shading them over a little bit. Then with a 4B pencil, I'm starting in the dark area, just underneath the arch there. And always remember that the darkest part is always the top. The bit that's just underneath the arch there is always the darkest. And it gradually gets lighter as you work your way down. Still with a 4B pencil. Just starting to put some of the water in now, some of the reflection from the dark area just under the bridge there. I'm sort of doing my own thing really with the water. I'm copying it fairly accurately, but I'm just adding a few more details and varying the tones just a little bit more than is actually in the photo. So from the 4B pencil that I put down, I've blended that in with the blender. Just give it sort of a flat graphite area there in the foreground. And then still with the blender, I'm actually drawing in some shapes, you know, to try and suggest the movement a little bit of the water. And then with the pencil eraser, I'm just starting to put in a few little highlights, little sparkles on the water, little ripples, that kind of thing. Then with a 2H pencil, I'm just going in just to sort of define a few darker areas in the water and make the lighter areas just kind of stand out a little bit more. And that's as good as done then. So there's the reference photo with the grid, and there's the finished drawing. So do have a go at the grid method. I think you'll find it helpful. Well, I hope so anyway. So thanks very much for viewing, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.